Ankle sprains are painful and they are common. And today we're going to talk about why they might be happening to you more frequently and how you can begin putting yourself in a position to avoid potential ankle sprains or be more resilient against them. And as always, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're a big fan of spacer mobility and you find benefit in recovering from the ground up, don't forget to like and subscribe. So the most common type of ankle sprain is going to be a lateral ankle sprain, which is when the outside of the ankle drops to the outside of the foot. Ankle sprains can happen when the ankle rolls into a position that is difficult to control and is loading the tissue in a way that exceeds the capacity that we currently can tolerate. So again, that's outside of our control and a capacity that we cannot handle. This then leads to things like the muscle straining, the ligaments tearing, the tendons being damaged or torn. Some way, shape, or form, we're gonna get some grade of ankle sprain is going to happen. In sports, we see this a lot, usually as a non-contact injury, meaning you're not being like hit at the knee and then your ankles drop into the ground. That's something different. We're talking about a person's running and they all of a sudden ankle rolls to the outside, or they're making a cut or a move on their field or court of play. And again, the ankle rolls to the outside or potentially drops down aggressively in. Again, the most common is rolling to the outside. And then that again puts them in a position they can't control, and then the tissue is not able to handle the load that is being given on it. And if you want to begin becoming more resilient to an ankle sprain, there's a couple different ways we can do that. Some of the more common approaches include strengthening the front of the ankle, strengthening the calf, strengthening the Achilles, and working on your balance, but those can be a little bit ambiguous. I'm going to give you some really specific things to focus on to not only help you avoid potential ankle sprains, but also be more resilient against them should you begin to roll your ankle into a compromising position. First thing we can do, and this is a big one, you got to think about the shoes that you're wearing. Now, obviously, in certain sports, you only have certain options, but it's really important to consider how a shoe impacts your foot while you're moving. The shoe has to be a point of consideration for us, and here's why. I'm going to show you two different videos from social media that talk a little bit about when Kevin Durant sprained his ankle and then looking at a common running shoe that's used. And you're going to be able to see that the anatomy of the shoe in this specific case, the elevated heel cushion and the stiff heel, create a really intense angle at that ankle. And when the foot rolls to the outside, which when it's more cushioned we can't control as easily, we create a more severe line of action that rolls the ankle. Let's take a look at the two social media reels to see what I mean. Look at how the heel creates a stiff line that drops over and across, making it more of an intense angle for the ankle as it rolls laterally outward or laterally inward. What these lines essentially show is how stiff shoes lock the heel and the ankle in place and create more of a dramatic angle for the ankles to roll, which causes injury.
They said he slipped in warm-ups.
Nope.
The heel and knee line remains within the leg, and the lateral line showing the ankle is not super steep. The heel up line shows it going outside the leg, and the angle line of the ankle shows how steep it is, meaning the ankle roll is significantly more intense in these shoes. So if we do have a stiff heel and a heel cushion, it could potentially contribute to making the ankle sprain worse or putting us in a position where we might be more likely to roll our ankle and sprain it. So by now we know that we should be investing in maybe a barefoot shoe, or we should be moving barefoot more, or at least being mindful of how we move if we have to wear a non-barefoot shoe. And the second thing that we can begin to do to be more resilient with our ankles is to begin addressing the resting positions that we use. Too often we're either sitting in a chair or standing, and so our ankle isn't used to going through a dynamic range of motion. But if we incorporate resting positions like the ones I'm about to show you, we begin to train the tissue in larger ranges of motion and keep the tissue supple so that way it can be more resilient to injury. First up, we have this shin resting position. You've seen this a lot of times in yoga, and we're really just beginning to open up the front end of the ankle here, so that way we get used to having the foot in that more plantar flexed, toe pointed position, and you can rock side to side. You can begin to lift the knees and really train some of those intense range of motion. And even as you're rocking side to side, you can begin to feel if one part of the ankle is a little bit more stiff than the other. Another great resting position we can start to do is begin resting in the bottom of a squat. If we can do this with our feet on the ground, nice and flat, focusing on keeping a strong foot position, meaning we're not lifting the toes, we're not curling the toes, we're not letting the arches collapse, we'll begin to strengthen not only the arch of the foot, which will help with our balance and our proprioception, meaning we're having better control as we move through space, but also better length of the calf and of the Achilles at the back end since we are resting in the bottom of a squat. Now, this next one's not a resting position, but it is worth noting because we can walk this way just to train in a little bit different, but walking purposely barefoot on the outside and inside blades of the feet to get the tissue used to being in those ranges of motion and to know what it feels like when the ankle begins to be loaded that way, in my opinion, can be really important because it just gives us a little bit more body awareness of when the ankle is going there, and it also gets us used to training the tissue in a controlled way through those ranges of motion. This is also one of my favorite ones because I've seen it a little bit more popular as well, being done by Ido Portal, who's a fantastic movement-based coach. All right, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you found our first two pieces helpful, which include we should be moving barefoot and considering the shoe that we're wearing on our field of play to help us ideally avoid situations that might roll our ankle. And not only that, now we're talking about the way that we rest and a little bit of a dynamic exercise in how we walk to begin training the tissue through larger ranges of motion so we can stay supple. So again, if you found those two things helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. And last but not least, a lot of times when we hear about how to avoid or train to resist ankle strains, it comes down to a lot about stability and balance. But how do we actually do that? Well, first, if you haven't seen our video on ankle stability, you can go ahead and click the link above to go back and view that YouTube video. But now I want to talk about something a little bit more specific, which has been popularized by David Weck, which is training a head over foot position when you're getting ready to jump, when you're getting ready to land, when you're walking, when you're running, and when you're making dynamic cuts on your field of play. The whole point is this: when we look at some of the best athletes and when we look in nature, we find that a very, very strong controlled position of balance comes from having the head stacked over the foot and being able to shift the head stacked over the other foot when we are moving dynamically. Now, if you give this a try for yourself, I think you will feel better control over your movement when you are training that head over foot position, regardless of whether you're sprinting or jumping. So in this case in point, when the head is stacked over the foot, and let's say we are landing from a run or getting ready to jump, that stacked line of the head being above the foot gives us a lot of control to be able to move off of that position. And if our foundation is set up really well, then perhaps we're less likely to have that ankle roll to the outside with the head not over the foot. So to wrap it all up, again, the three things that we talked about were being aware of the shoe that you're wearing and how that heel cushion and stiff heel impacts your potential capacity to roll the ankle, training the foot and ankle in resting positions to help keep the tissue supple, and then being aware of that head over foot position, as we just saw, how that can help us with our balance, how that can help us with our stability, and why that's so important in helping us avoid positions that might lead to a potential ankle sprain. We hope you enjoyed this video, and let's keep recovering from the ground up.